Welcome to the Build with Boundaries podcast. My name is Manaz, and this podcast is for high achieving women looking to grow without sacrificing family and life. Discover what's missing and making you frustrated, and what's most important for you to achieve the success that you truly desire. All this without compromising the most important things in your life: your time, your family, your values, and your aspirations. So let's dive into today's topic.
Welcome to another episode of the Build with Boundaries podcast, and today we are talking all about overwhelm. We are going to talk about not just why it happens, but also how you can recognize this and what you can do about it. So this is the episode if you are struggling and you're asking yourself questions about whether you even have enough time. So if you're feeling like there's just not enough time, no matter how hard you try, stick with me and let's cover this in detail. Let's begin with talking about why overwhelm happens. And there are always different hidden sort of reasons, and they will come through, but usually we feel the overwhelm, and that is when we have this recognition for the fact that we are feeling completely overloaded mentally. Now, there can be several different reasons why this is happening, and we don't need to think of it in a negative way. So I'm hoping through everything that I share with you today, you'll be able to see that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, even when we are feeling the feels of overwhelm. First, I want to start with expectations and how realistic or unrealistic are you being with what you are expecting of yourself. If you take a moment to think about all the things that you have got on your plate and all the responsibilities or duties that you feel that you are, have this commitment for, you are probably spreading yourself across a lot of areas which you're not even recognizing on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, you will have family care duties. Maybe it's parents, maybe it's children, maybe it's another job. And, you are also trying to be the business owner that you want to be. You'll also have personal goals that you are wanting to achieve. You may have your own passions, interests, hobbies, anything that you have, whether that is socializing even with your friends and making time for yourself and, giving yourself this permission to have that time for yourself. So I want to ask you a question around this. And are you expecting yourself to do all of those things perfectly? We often place such a huge amount of pressure on ourselves, and often we don't even realize that we're doing this. And it's never about doing more and do more things with the time that we have. It's actually focusing on what really matters and what matters to you on this deep level. So for this, we have to address this and sort of really look at ourselves objectively and see what it is that we have on our plate. And that brings me to the next point, which is another reason that overwhelm can be happening is because we have what we can simply call energy leaks. And I want to explain what I mean by this. So it's not just one thing. It can be tasks, it can be people, or it could even be habits that are actually draining you without actually adding any value. Now, to give some examples around this and help you understand, in terms of tasks, this could be this constantly checking on emails. Even if you're doing that constantly through your day, just think about how you were interrupting yourself. You are actually creating an energy leak there. you could be overcommitting yourself, because when you are, talking with people, whether that's family, friends, or clients, it might be, in all areas, and this overcommitment, because you're jumping in and saying yes to all of the things. And, this is not something that we need to feel bad about, because I want you to turn this around, and this can be something that you can use to your advantage, knowing and understanding this, because it's not always our fault that we feel compelled to say yes or compelled to do certain things. Sometimes it's just feels a lot easier for us to do those things and fall into, sort of give in to those moments, because it could be partly to do with repetition and habit, because we formed these habits, we've been doing it for some time. We might be feeling some kind of anxiety or pressure, and we feel like that would actually relieve it. Another thing that affects our energy leaks is also, as I mentioned about saying yes, then obviously vice versa, trying to say no. That would be a boundary, and having a lack of boundaries is not going to help us, because when we have these blurred lines between what is okay and what is not, it's not even clear to us what we need. And this can also create overwhelm, because we just feel like we're all over the place. We're trying to do it all. Be there for ourselves, be there for our children, be there for our family, our clients, our work, aspirations, our goals, all the things. Again, I'll give you a question to reflect on. This could be really helpful for you. Is think about, when was the last time that you said no without guilt? That's really important, that little piece on the end, because it's not just saying no, it's all obviously how you say it and how that's affecting you. So if you are saying no, but you're just feeling constantly guilty about it, there's still something that is continuing on in you. Now, trying to identify what these energy leaks are is an important task as well, because when you start looking and becoming an observer of yourself, of how you are working, how you are living, how you are doing things day to day, moment to moment, can make small adjustments. They don't have to be huge things, to help you to plug those leaks and really not let those happen. Now, it can be simple things like unnecessarily doing too many things at the same time. And that is not always the best way to work. And when you are most productive, you will be working on one thing at a time. So when you're constantly feeling like you're everywhere, there's that feeling again. You might feel like you're not actually getting anywhere far with any of those one things in particular. And also another kind of trap that people can fall into is then doing the quick, easy and simple tasks first. And in some ways, it's about ticking those things off. But, we're exhausting and depleting our energy on those things that probably didn't really need to be prioritized in that way. So when we start looking at where we're focusing and effectively how we're prioritizing our work, that can be so helpful, because it helps us to decide what is important for us and what is not as important, and for us to recognize that and actually act on it. So we're not dealing with the lower priority things and at the moments when we should be focusing on our high energy tasks, things that we need to be fully present and allowing ourselves to be part of this, really using our energy in the best way. Consider what it is that you are giving your energy to, because just like time, energy is the most abundant and very valuable asset that we have. And thinking about maybe one thing that you may have done in the past that was like this, and as I'm talking about like a low priority and making it high priority by doing and acting on it first, where is that happening? And where are the things that you are applying yourself to that you possibly didn't need to? And, it's not about doing everything, because if we look at highly successful people, there's always clues. And again, the clue that always comes from them in this particular area that I always feel that is beautiful to share is, true success and whatever that means to you doesn't come from doing everything. They're very skilled at knowing how to prioritize themselves and how to prioritize their work, what they need to do and what they can actually allow other people to do. So it's not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things. Now, let's talk about the role of boundaries, right? Because the boundaries have a huge part to play in all of this. And whenever we are dealing with something that is to do with energy leaks, protecting our time, it's essential that these boundaries that we have or do not have, they're playing a part in it. And us recognizing that, so valuable and so helpful, because when we are just stuck in routines and habits and patterns and things that we've just been doing all of the time, we often cannot see past that. We cannot see any other way of doing or being. And this is where it's really helpful to be able to have somebody look at what you're doing and what you are, how you are operating in a very objective way. Because that is definitely what I have found with working with clients. They cannot see what needs to be shifted. And having that little bit of support and is something that is life-changing, because it doesn't just affect them then. It helps them to see what it is that they need to change, those patterns that they've fallen into, that maybe become habits, and they're doing things on autopilot without recognizing that there is actually space for making minor changes here. And all these minor changes, lots of them, is going to combine into really serving ourselves better, using our energy in a much more aligned manner, not depleting our energy either, and also using our time wisely and using it on the things that matter. So boundaries have a huge role to play in helping us to manage our time. And when we feel comfortable with knowing what it is that we need, it becomes easier to recognize what boundary would be helpful for us to protect that. Because ultimately, what boundaries are doing are helping us to protect how we want to show up, what we want to do, and really helping us to be true to ourselves. Because, once we understand what that looks like, the boundaries are there to act as a reminder to help us to stay on our side, to help us to see where one thing finishes and the next thing begins. And really, it's constant reminder. It's a constant reminder not only to us, but also serves our family. It serves the other people in our life, because they can then see what those expectations are. They can see, if somebody's leading with strong boundaries, you will be able to see that. And when you see that, you will most definitely be aspiring to be able to be like them and be feeling inspired that that can work. And you're seeing how effective they can make it for themselves. Common things that can come up here with the difficulty of boundaries, which I fully recognise it's easier said than done. The guilt that we already mentioned. So, not without feeling guilty about it. because it can always feel like it's something you are pushing on to people, which is not the case, and that's not how we want to think about boundaries. What else? So people pleasing can definitely not be helpful here, because when we feel like we just have to keep everybody happy and avoid conflict, and we even sort of scared of initiating this conflict by not saying no, we're almost normalizing it ourselves to not have the boundaries, and that is so not for us. Like it is really not serving us at all. So what we want to do instead is to normalize this discomfort that we might feel around boundaries, especially in the beginning when it just feels so hard. And it is okay to feel awkward about it. But if we don't understand why we need something, then we never have this drive to want the boundary. And this has been key in all the work that I've done with my clients to help them to set the boundaries. What's always been very much at the core has been them understanding why they needed them, and through that understanding, it's like they can give themselves permission that they need this as well. And then that boundary setting just becomes so much easier, because it's so obvious that that is what they need. And when you feel inside that you truly need something and you accept that, there's just so much grace that we're allowing for ourselves that allows us to be strong in who we are and be more confident at actually setting those boundaries, because there's a reason we need them. And I always talk about purpose, one of my key core values. It's really important for me to have a purpose behind everything, because it just feels like it's a waste. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resource, waste of energy, if there isn't a purpose behind that. And the same thing goes with boundaries. I think if we do not understand the purpose, it's like we do not have the fuel or the motivation to want we actually need. Boundaries are there to help us to get some more freedom. They are not about being restrictive. It's not about shutting people off, and it's not about saying no all the time. It's about saying no to the things that are not in alignment with you. And it's about, creating this space that feels aligned, the life that feels aligned to you, where you can make decisions and do things according to what serves you and what helps you be your best self. Now, I want to share a couple of points here that could be helpful in terms of implementation. And I think every day we start fresh, and we can start fresh, but really understanding where we are with that. Like, are we truly starting our day fresh every single day? And if not, then let's talk about how we can have and create almost a daily reset. So, having this idea that we have another day to do the things, to have the time, the capacity, the energy, the drive, to complete things that we want to do. And when we start our day, being very focused on where we want to apply ourselves. So that's simply like starting the day by asking yourself a simple question like, what are the 3 things that matter the most today? And bringing ourselves back to this is helping us to prioritize and helping us to see what it is that we need. And, being realistic, like we spoke earlier, it is about being realistic. It's definitely about not adding extra pressure on ourselves, but working in a way that will be energizing to us, working in a way that will not be depleting our energy. We will be spending it on things that we love, spending that time and energy and focus on the areas that we really want to spend that time on. Another thing that you can do is think about how you operate during the day. And when you do things that are, for example, tasks in your business, like adding like with like tasks together, that is so helpful. So, for example, if you're doing some admin work, there's probably a few different types of tasks that you could do that are still all focusing on the same type of systems and task type, meaning that your energy is focused in this one area and you're not having to keep on chopping and changing and switching from different things that are very different. So really trying to group things that are similar together, that is also a way of preserving our energy. So like we were talking about earlier about, maybe feeling like we are compelled to read emails all the time or go through them or check on them, that can become a huge distraction. But if you then had set times where you did things like checking an email and responding to what's needed and clearing out your inbox, then spending a dedicated time for that would mean that you will not be wasting it throughout, which is not only wasteful of that time in those moments, but you take away your focus from other things that you're doing. So it is so helpful to try and focus on one area at one time. And we know, even with the science, that, when we say we're multitasking, we are still like task switching. We're just doing it very, very quickly. We're doing one thing and we're doing a little bit of another, and then we go back to it. And this task switching is really draining, very much draining. And sometimes we have to do it, right? As mums, as caregivers, as people who are responsible for more than just ourselves, we can often have to do that. And we've had to learn to do that, especially when our children were younger. And that is great, but it has its place, and understanding that when you carry that through in everything, it's necessarily going to be as helpful. I want to share with you a story about a client was feeling that, all the energy drains we're talking about, constantly switching from things. If her phone rang, she would be picking it up. Even if she was on a call with someone, she would be picking up her phone. She'd be answering the door. She'd be doing all the things, like allowing anything that happens to allowing that to happen to her, allowing it to distract her and take her away from what it was that she wanted to do. And that kind of email, even that is like, I'll just check this email. I'll just respond to this one thing. And what it meant was that she was just, really spending her time very much overwhelmed, because it was just one thing. It's like being on a treadmill. There's constantly something. You have to keep on moving constantly, and it takes an awful lot of energy away from you, especially when you're trying to dedicate time to your business, to grow your business, and to have like that time for yourself where you're spending it on your own self too. And everything, all the lines get blurred. So she recognized that she needed to work on her boundaries and didn't know where to start. So, this is exactly what we worked through together. But initially, I just want to say that initially we had to begin with what she needed. And in order for us to understand what we need to understand where we're going. And usually that comes from first understanding ourselves and really knowing ourselves in a deeper level. So that is where, when we did deep work with covering her human design, also uncovering her values, and really understanding and building this picture, it is so empowering for us to be able to see ourselves in this way to accept ourselves, and then be able to use our strengths to apply that to everything. And as soon as you know what your design is, what your core values are, you've already built this picture of truly and authentically who you are. And when you understand that, then comes the time of understanding what it is that needs to change and how would that be best to change and what boundaries would actually be helpful to protect those values, to protect how you operate and how to maximize using your design and actually living by it so that you know when you are in alignment and you know when you're not in alignment. And through the time with her, we worked on things like her daily schedule and like when to work and when not to work, what boundaries she needed with people around her, and where was there this conflict. There's always some kind of conflict going on, and either it's internally and we're putting pressure on ourselves or we're feeling it from the outside. So how can we protect ourselves, and what do we really need in order for us to stand true in our power and be confidently ourselves? So the kind of things that can happen from that is just feeling very aware, self-aware, and understanding and truly accepting who we are, leaning into our strengths more so that rather than us working against things that are not most natural for us, why not double down on the things that we are so good at? And some of those things, what's really fascinating in human design is some of those things we are not even aware of. So when we do the work through the human design activation, we can start seeing these gifts that have never been, it's almost like not knowing about them means that you can't own them. And when you start seeing them, like you have this true appreciation for yourself and you can let go of all of this stuff too. And this is exactly what happened with this client, like letting go of a lot of things that just are not serving. And they can be both at a conscious level and a subconscious. So it's truly, truly empowering to be able to look at ourselves with grace, with compassion, with joy, with, seeing ourselves in a different light. And this is the whole point, that overwhelm can just be like a sign. It can be helping us to see that we're not in alignment. That is what overwhelm is. And, being able to use that to our advantage, because, we all have finite amount of time in one day that we're able to work. We only have a finite amount of time that we're able to spend time with our family in one day. And maybe other things that you want to commit to or you have got commitments for. Maybe it's your personal, it's your self-care, because you know that things and challenges that you're going through also mean that you need to be able to have your cup overfilling so that you can actually help those around you. And we can't do that when we cannot understand what it is that needs to change. And those changes that we can't see, and we keep trying things and they're not working, and we just feel like we're in this area of lack in terms of time, and just, not having enough time, because we can't see the things that have actually drained all of the time. We can't see where we could be more efficient and effective, where we're perhaps applying ourselves where we don't need to, or don't need to in that way, and we can maybe make changes and tweaks to how we do things and how we operate to make that all better. I hope that this episode has been helpful for you, and I hope you can see that overwhelm can be seen as a sign. And when you see it as a sign, you can start becoming an observer of, being curious as to why this overwhelm is showing up and what things could be helpful for you. And it's not a bad thing. So I want to leave you with this one thought about overwhelm. Overwhelm doesn't define. It's a sign to realign. And all we need to do is to start small. think about those small things that need to change. And like I said, all those things add up and they will have this bigger effect, and the big changes will come as well. And also thinking about yourself and what you need, like truly feeling empowered to make the decisions that are right for you, and to work on those boundaries, and giving yourself permission to have the boundaries that you absolutely deserve and need, and allow you to actually do more of the things that you love and help more of the people that you love and care about, whether that is in your business or out with. So that is the end of today's episode. I hope it's been helpful. Do let me know, and I would really appreciate you subscribing to the podcast, giving me some feedback on how you're finding this. It does mean the world to me, and please share it with people that you think would find it helpful. So until next time, that's it from me, and I'm here, always believing in you. Signing off until next time.
This podcast is for you, so reach out and let me know what you thought about this episode. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, where I also share valuable content. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on your favourite podcasting platform so you never miss another episode. I can't wait for you to join me for the next episode of the Build with Boundaries podcast.